They've even used the language, it's kind of a legal terrorism. We have not developed that jurisprudence at all, unlike the West. A person can be picked up in India on a false case. I have always advised, people in that situation not to rush to court. A child is used as a pawn.
Yeah.
It happens.
Divorce is very stressful for either party and involves some of the most critical things in a person's life, including finance and children. While social and legal empathy leans more towards women, on many occasions, men also suffer in a marriage. In the last video, we talked about what women should do if she's filing for a divorce. This video will delve deep into the process, finances, and do's and don'ts from a man's perspective. To understand this, we are going to talk to Mr. Sanjay Sen. He has been a lawyer for 30 years, a senior lawyer. Thank you, Mr. Sen, for talking to us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me over.
30 years you have been consulting people on matrimonial issues. If you have to give me a ballpark figure or a percentage in how many cases it's initiated by men and in how many cases it is initiated by women?
I'll start with a caveat. I am a commercial lawyer. I do advise people on matrimonial issues, whether it's a friend, neighbor, colleagues, young colleagues, people I work with otherwise. To answer your question, it's difficult to give statistics. I'm not aware. But I would say it's an equal number. Men also, a large number of men file divorce cases because of bad marriage. Yeah, I would say it's around
On the similar lines.
Similar lines, and subject to various other factors.
Okay.
Place, economic factors, region, religion, social background, all this matters. So statistics can be seen, but equal, these factors are equally important to be kept in mind.
Sure. So while I was doing this research, this section came most of the time. It is section 498A. What is 498A? And could you give us examples where section 498A has been misused?
498A is a criminal provision that was introduced in 1983. It is a provision that is about harassment by a husband or cruelty or a relative of the husband. So it was meant to prevent the atrocities that came with dowry or the demand for dowry. Yes, it has been misused. Courts across India have recognized that this provision has been misused. Although Supreme Court has upheld the validity, the constitutional validity of the section, but it's true that they've even used the language, it's kind of a legal terrorism, where you file an FIR, you pick up the mother or the father or the brother of the husband, the lady. So it has been misused. So even now, many high courts across the country, they have made protocol that when a complaint is filed under 498A, before an FIR is registered and action is taken, to run it through, some kind of a process, where the Women's Commission or some other agency or the Women's Cell will call the parties and understand whether it's a genuine case or it's not a genuine case. And only then the FIR registration and then the proceedings will take place. But it has been used. It has been used wrongfully in several cases. Okay. It's true.
So you talked about the courts are coming up with certain protocols. But what can one do? Let's talk about the do's and don'ts. So what can one do in these cases to save the immediate family member from the trauma?
When a criminal case is filed, you are required to participate in the criminal process, which is investigation.
Yes.
At that stage. So the investigation stage, there is a threat of arrest. So legally, you can only go and secure an anticipatory bail or something, and say that this is prima facie. It's a legally sustainable case.
Uh, and in cases of fake cases, what is the legal recourse for mental harassment caused? And what is the situation of compensation in our country if somebody files a fake case and it is quashed by the court, but you have gone through the whole process? So can you ask for compensation?
It's very poor. Our law of compensation for mental harassment because of wrongful prosecution is extremely poor. We have not developed that jurisprudence at all, unlike the West. A person can be picked up in India on a false case, and all he can do is to secure his liberty through a legal process. But then the loss of reputation, loss of job, other things that happens because of a criminal proceeding, that is seldom looked at. And not only the person against whom the allegation is made suffers,
Yes.
but even his immediate family suffers. His children suffer. They are traumatized in school. It comes onto the newspaper, and the children suffer, and this stays for a long time.
And there's no provision of compensation for them?
No, there is. You can sue for compensation. You have a right to sue.
But that will again take time to...
Takes enormous amount of time, and the principles are available globally, but our courts have been slow in recognizing and granting compensation. We are in the process. It's getting developed, but still, you have one or two odd cases where you see a large amount of compensation being paid, but that's not the norm. Across India, it's not the norm.
Okay. And even incarceration, you have there in jail for some time.
Yeah.
It's not your problem if somebody has put a fake case.
Yes,
it talks about about your human rights.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So-
it's a violation. It's a
violation.
Absolutely.
It's a
But here, it's not only the complainant who's at fault. Even the agency, the state agencies, which has proceeded to investigate and in that process arrested a man wrongfully,
Yes.
even they are at fault. Because
So has there been any precedent of police or anybody being asked to pay to that person?
no, I'm not aware that, because he has immunity as a public servant discharging his duty.
Okay.
So that immunity is available to him, and so he takes a person inside, and then let's say for the Ria's case, that's film star in Bombay who was in drugs. Now we don't know what will finally happen, whether she spent some time in jail.
Okay.
This kid. Aryan Khan. He was in prison for some time. Now,
And even the latest...
now, where is the compensation? Nobody's talking about compensation.
So if your marriage is in doldrums and you know that you're going to separate, so what can you do to speed up the whole process of the separation and divorce?
I have always advised, people in that situation not to rush to court. Talk.
Okay.
You have to have channels of communication open. That's the first and fundamentally most important thing. If you shut all communication, then it becomes difficult. You must, if you can't directly communicate through people you trust, friends, relatives, but keep channels of communication open. My advice always has been invest more time, even if your filing has to be postponed by 6 months, 1 year. Please do that. Don't rush to court, because once you go to court, then the issues get hardened.
Okay.
Then very difficult to work. So keep talking.
Okay.
Once the consent terms are there, then you can expedite and finish the process within 6 months to 1 year.
Okay.
That's the best way to do it.
That's the best way to do it.
No question.
Okay.
To go to court on our present principle of fault, that one party is at fault, it takes an enormous amount of time. So the best is to come to settled terms of consent and then go to court.
Okay. So, in India, we have changed a lot, we have developed a lot, but in many cases, man is the main earner in the family. And if you're going through a divorce process, so from a man's perspective, what should he do to maintain his finances and make this,
देखो, maintenance and alimony has to be paid. So that's given.
That's given.
You can't avoid that. So what are the principles? Maintenance is on an interim basis, which should look after the immediate interests of the spouse, the wife.
Okay.
Which means she should be living standard should not be very different from what she was enjoying at the time when the marriage was there, the marriage was working. So that much of compensation at the time of the interim maintenance you have to pay, which could be about 20, 25, 30% of your salary or that's based on your revenues. That's not based on your asset.
Okay.
So that's a revenue payout on a monthly basis. But once you've settled, let's say you come to court and now you have to pay a final then your alimony, then your net worth, your asset worth comes to question. Then you have to pay a certain amount of your net worth.
Okay. And that amount could be
about 1/3, 1/5 to 1/3 of your net worth. That could be, it depends. I don't think there is a maths to it. It's not an arithmetical calculation. It depends on the social status, the background, your the age of the couple, number of years of marriage, dependence, whether you have elderly parents to look after, medical condition, disability. A lot of people believe that prenups are completely illegal or doesn't work, but that's an ambiguous space.
okay.
So one author has said it's uniquely ambiguous whether prenups are legal or illegal. But courts have recognized not the validity as such, but they have recognized terms in a prenup, enforced them. Calcutta High Court, there are judgments which have enforced. Bombay High Court has also enforced. So now prenups are happening. Whether it offends public policy and therefore it's a bad contract. Keep that aside for a moment. A large number of high net worth individuals are creating prenups. These are very smartly drafted.
Okay.
It's happening a lot in Bombay, I know. Delhi, I'm not sure as to what kind of numbers are there. This is one way where a well drafted with clear terms will have some benefit. It's not yet clear whether courts will completely enforce it, will enforce some of the terms and hold some of those other terms to be invalid. That's a different argument. But that's a starting point. But the problem is it's more cultural in our system as to when you want to get married, do you want to talk about divorce? And prenup. So it's a cultural issue. And we need to address that also. There has to be debate on that.
You should hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Yes, it's like an insurance.
It's like an insurance.
Like a health insurance you don't want to fall sick, but you buy an insurance. Life insurance is the same. So prenups has to mentally, one has to, I think Maneka Gandhi had mentioned that they should be, pushed, if my recollection is correct. But that's one way. Wealth managers are trying to, even formation of trusts, in which a lot of family investments are placed in trusts, and how the trust deed is worded is also to insulate some of these issues. Then, access to businesses at the time, that's also clarified and put in a document that these businesses are insulated from. So these kind of areas need to be worked on. I'm sure there are good, competent professional lawyers, contract lawyers, who are who can advise on these issues. Contract family lawyers and contract lawyers together can work and advise on these issues. I must tell you, in the UK, till about 2006-7, prenups were not there. It came in.
Okay.
So now it's recognized. So this is an ongoing process, and I think one should look at that also. And I told you about the trust.
Yes.
Yes.
So, if you have to say, what is the cost involved in this whole divorce proceeding, and how important is it that you find a good lawyer? And if you're planning to find a good lawyer, what should you see? Because you don't know whom you should approach. So, what is the importance of a good lawyer? The cost involved in it, in the whole process, and what are the flags that you need to see if the lawyer is a good lawyer or bad lawyer?
Costs vary from city, states. Like a Delhi cost and a Kolkata cost will be different,
Okay.
although they are large cities and metros. So, therefore, the cost will vary.
Okay.
But yes, to get a good lawyer, reputation, the market reputation of a lawyer is important. You must find out, do your diligence, and see how that lawyer has worked. Do a check, get some reference.
Okay.
And then I think, like a doctor, when you meet a lawyer, the first couple of meetings,
Okay.
whether you get the right vibes, the right pulse, you understand each other well. Because this is these are not like commercial matters where it's more clinical. This is more personal. So you have to open up, discuss a lot of personal details.
Yeah.
So you must have that comfort with the lawyer, and that is, I think, only after you've done the initial checks, after your first couple of meetings, you know whether you want to go ahead with that lawyer or not. So therefore, you need to always look for a good lawyer and definitely look for references who could tell you that they have had experience with that lawyer. And then, before you commit to hand over your papers to that lawyer, you must have some preliminary meetings
Okay.
to assess whether you can work with that lawyer or not. And it's a good idea to also ask for the overall cost of the litigation that the lawyer will charge. So you have some kind of a budget in mind. So you can, and how that will be paid. Is it a lump sum payment? Is it per appearance? How many appearances are estimated? All that should be worked out for filing of documents, pleadings, all these costs. So that should be done.
With regard to this, how important is it to have an amicable solution and settlement rather than trying to get more out of say,
Always amicable.
even
No
if you
question.
have to let go of certain things?
Yes. And if there's a child involved, it's extremely important to have an amicable settlement. You should look at the child should be at the center of that. It should be central to any settlement. So as long as the interest of the child is protected and a little bit of give and take is possible, without completely compromising on your rights.
What if the other party is using child as a...
It happens. It does happen. A child is used as a pawn.
Yeah.
It happens, but that should be resisted. I mean, you shouldn't allow that to happen, but it does happen. I am aware of it. So therefore, you should look at an amicable solution.
Can you tell us a bit about what the law says about where the child should be, whether the child should be with the mother or the father? How is the law about it? And in case the man does not get the custody and he gets the right to visitation, how he can make sure that this is implemented in true spirit?
This process has evolved over a period of time. Generally, for a minor, the mother gets custody, and unless there's something, that is peculiar to a case. So visitation rights are available to the spouse, the father or the mother. Generally, the father has visitation rights to spend weekends, right to take the child on short holidays. All that becomes relevant. In fact, I mentioned to you, there's a book by Malvika Rajkotia, a very distinguished family lawyer, called Undone.
Okay.
Intimacy Undone, where there's a chapter on this.
Okay.
And it's a very important chapter because she traces various guidelines and documents. There are some guidelines issued in Bombay by the Bombay courts on shared parenting.
Okay.
So those are important guidelines on shared parenting, which now is being practiced. So the father and the mother both share the child's, and that's a very happy thing to be, for the child to be in, because parents can't live together, and the child understands that. But for the child, both of them are there.
Yes.
So that's important. So the shared parenting norms are now available. There are guidelines which courts are using, and I told you in Bombay there's a guideline that can be a benchmark which parties can use when they are drafting their terms of separation and a child is involved.
Okay. And in terms of alimony, what would you suggest? A one-time settlement or a payment over a period of time?
Depends on the capability and the what the person can do at that point of time.
Okay.
If it's possible to do a one-time settlement, I think it's better. Then and if there's no child involved, then there's a complete clean cut.
Yes.
And you're out. But if there's a child involved, then you still need to maintain the child.
Yes.
Education costs, medical costs, holidays, all that. So that becomes different. So then you can't say that I'll pay a one-time alimony and not look after the child's interest.
Okay. And what would your advice to the men who are going through this while the court proceedings are on? What should be the do's and don'ts for them?
One should be careful not to let the other party have access to evidence easily.
Okay.
Whether in the form of social media posts, or whether it's Facebook, your other Insta, and all this, you have to be careful.
Okay.
So that the evidence is not easily available, which can be used against you.
Okay.
For the other aspects, for your financials and all, you have to file affidavits in court on your net worth and all that. So I don't think you can do much about it. Your tax returns will be there. Sometimes the courts have also seen that the tax returns do not tell the whole story.
Yes.
So they look at, let's say, in the last few years, number of holidays you've taken, how many times you've eaten in a restaurant, what kind of a home you live, how many homes you've changed, what cars you drive, all that.
And now we have annual income statement in this also.
Yeah. So, this is beyond your audited accounts.
Okay.
This is beyond your tax returns.
Yes.
Because sometimes they don't tell the full story.
Yes.
So then lifestyle tells you the story.
Okay.
Where did you go for holidays? What cars you've changed or you drive? So if you're going through this process, don't change your car, don't buy expensive cars, don't do something which will only become more visible and can be used against you. Just lie low and get done with the process.
Do you think a uniform civil code where at least the marriage and divorce part is codified would really go a long way in making this process a lot smoother?
On the uniform civil code, often it's called the common civil code, the common code. I don't have a view for the reason we don't know the contents. Like you said, it's not available.
Yes, the draft is not available.
Yeah. So we don't know the contents. So it's only when you have the contents, you can actually have a view on it.
Yes.
Justice Kuldeep Singh had a view earlier where the Supreme Court said it's one country, so it should have one code. But India may be one country. Geographically, with other indicators are there, but every 100 kilometers we are different. It's whether it's religion, customs, among Hindus, castes. It's completely different. It's not the West. So a replication of a Western model per se will be difficult. But of course, one should look at what the Uniform Civil Code, is stating. And if you can take from all the religions the best principles,
Yes.
from Islam, like Nikah
Yes.
is there among the Muslim families. They have a Nikah, which is close to a prenup.
Okay.
So can you add that, which is not there in among the Hindus? So can you add that and say now the Uniform Civil Code will have a prenup? That's a good principle. It's now a legally recognized, legislated principle. So therefore, I'm sure people who are more familiar with the personal laws of religions apart from the Hindus, if those values are picked up and then shared and merged with the principles of the Hindu Marriage Act, then you have a common set of principles.
Yeah.
Then possibly it'll work. But then the debate should not be that this is a replication of the Hindu Marriage Act which is converted to a Uniform Civil Code.
Yes.
That will then make it a political issue. It loses the purpose for which the Supreme Court has been, has Shah Banu and all that. They're very positive judgment in Shah Banu, where they made some comments about what's wrong with certain provisions of the uncodified Islamic law, which is applicable to Muslims in India, especially on maintenance, on the period of maintenance. So that needs to be improved, and that can form a part. But I think a debate will only happen when you have an initial draft content, which is then put to public debate. People have to align their thoughts, their customs. It'll take time. I mean, it's not something that can happen overnight because people are different in India. It's not the West.
Absolutely.
We're the second largest Muslim country. I mean, we have to recognize that fact. Apart from that, among Hindus, we are so different. Like I said, in Goa, they have a Portuguese civil code, 1800 something.
Mm-hmm.
So there are principles available in India also. It's not that we don't have those.
I don't think. Do you think it makes sense if a state government makes a civil code? So how will it work if somebody has to come from other place? They can.
I don't know. I don't know whether. I haven't actually heard of any. Apart from Portugal, in Goa, I don't know of any other state which has actually legislated. They've been talking about it, but I don't know. That I could be wrong. But Portuguese civil code is there.
But it has to be a national level. It can't be like every state cannot have their own. It has to.
It will be more chaotic.
It will be more chaotic,
especially when people move around the country, and I don't know how they'll apply it. We have people marrying across states. We have people who don't want to convert and still be married. So I don't know how this will happen. I have friends who were married under, in a church and Hindu rites. Yeah. So one day was a church wedding, the other day was a Hindu wedding, and they're still married. And so I don't know how you want to implement it in a state-wise. It makes more sense to have a national debate, consensus, and then a legislation. Makes more sense.
Thank you, Mr. Sen, for giving your time. It was a pleasure.
You're most welcome.